Hey there, seekers and shapeshifters, healers and expanders. Welcome to the Embodied Spirit Uncensored. I'm Nicole D'Alessandro, and I am here to guide you through an in-depth experience like no other, channeled from higher wisdom through me directly to you. This is a place for those who dare to delve deeper, who crave transformation beyond the conventional, and who are ready to embrace the mystical union of science and spirit. Here at the Embodied Spirit, we don't just scratch the surface, we dive into the very depths of existence. Prepare to be challenged, to change, and to elevate into a new version of yourself. We're inviting you into an entirely new world, a realm that extends far beyond your physical being. So if you're ready to transform your understanding and awaken to your true spirit, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this profound journey together. Welcome back to Embodied Spirit Uncensored. I'm Nicole D'Alessandro, and today I'm so fucking excited. We're diving into the fascinating world of neuroscience and its profound impact on our personal transformative journeys. And it's around neural armour, a bit of a topic that might hurt our brains today. And it's going to be related to the armour that I created in an earlier stage of my life and how I lived through and expressed my deepest challenges of survival mode through rage. And this fascinating world of neuroscience helps us understand our neural pathways and brain development, and especially from childhood, and how it shapes our neurological survival patterns and how all of us tend to build our armors depending on our disposition. There are so many other aspects, our genetics, our coding, our conditioning will depend on the armors that we build. But for me, it was rage. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of brain science, let me share a little bit more about, I realized in the last episodes, we haven't really talked too much to embodiment. And I've made the assumption that you might understand what embodiment means. But for me, embodiment and its relationship to transformation and self-actualization can mean anything to do with feeling something deeply. And you'll hear us, or most of us have this languaging around, let's get to the guts of this. Let's get to the depth of this matter. And to know and experience something with awareness deep within is what embodiment means. Now, the embodied spirit, embodiment doesn't necessarily mean it's about embodying joy and all of the light-hearted, fun stuff of life. To be fully embodied in richness, we must, in my experience, learn to embody all of our expressions, including rage. And the key to the transformative process is embodying all of those facets and learning to process and move beyond the stories, and then bringing this centeredness, a coherence to the experience, and through the body, through the heart, through the gut, through the mind. And we can speak to that later. I'll be inviting some really amazing people that I've worked with over the past around gut health, around brain, heart coherence, and how disembodiment, or how negating embodying all of the expressions of ourself can cause sickness and these habits and neural armor from our nervous systems. Really powerful stuff, but I don't want to go off because I'm very excited about this topic. So when we avoid or we distract ourselves or we start to project, we start to fuckerize our journey, and that's where the polarities, we start to create a good and a bad, and we delve deeper into this illusion, this world of, that's not how it happened. I'm not like that. I would never be like that. It's all their fault. It's a blame game, and we look anywhere but our expression. And that's a survival mechanism. So it's not to be judged. It's just to develop a vulnerability around it. So we forget that rage, anger, shame is an expression of love, and rather become distracted by it. We need to see it as an opportunity to unravel, repattern, break the old habitual patterns of self that are keeping us stuck. That does not mean that you go about and beat people up, or you run people over in your car because you have road rage. That's not what that means. It means that we start to begin to seek support or a guiding light, or we intentionally set up ways in which we can become more self-aware, more self-loving, and more understanding and more embodied in that coherence and what's actually happening. And for me, growing up with the influences of strong but polarizing female figures, the good, the bad, and the ugly, from me realizing that it was no longer just about me in my life with my mum and dad, it was now about my brother. All of those little things and the traumas and the genetics and the surroundings that I was in and the energies of everybody that I was surrounded by played a significant role in how my brain developed its coping mechanisms. And these women, the men in my life, the happenings that happened to me in my earlier childhood, the vulnerabilities that I was exposed to, the various faces of love, resilience, and conflict all impacted my brain development, and they deeply influenced my emotional landscape. So in neuroscience, there's something called the negativity bias, and our brains are more sensitive to negative experiences than positive ones. And this is a survival mechanism. So I spoke to that quite a lot in my last few episodes around me at 14, looking back, only seeing the shitness of my life. And as a child, when I encountered anger, disappointment, the worries, I was so worried about my family and particularly my mum. And she was okay. I just didn't know because what I saw and what I was told things should be were different. And there wasn't a match. There was a contradiction in the expression of love in my life. And my worries were misinterpreted. They were a nuisance. They were annoying. I became neurotic. I tried to control things. And I also saw that very quickly in my life, the people that were perceived as weak or that were more emotional in their expressions tend to get the projections and the trauma of the whole entire system, the family system, was projected onto that person. So what my brain and my survival skill set started to take on was this realization, and these habitual patterns were that if you were weak, you were singled out and you were at more risk. So my brain began and my nervous system began to develop a fight response. And I built really strong neural pathways to remember these feelings ostensibly to protect me from future harm. And these experiences, especially when repeated, strengthened certain neural pathways that led to the development of what I call my armour of rage. And the armour was essentially a collection of neural responses that prepared me to fight back towards any perceived threats. The problem is I was a fucking walking armoured, like getting ready, my cortisol, my adrenals. I developed an ADHD style of brain where I was always on the move and I was always ready for that fight. I was that girl on the oval that was fighting, and it didn't take me much to get pissed off. And when I go back to that time where I tried to intervene or support my family in our expression of addiction, I can see why I was perceived as a problem, because I was creating fucking havoc. I remember once, and I don't carry shame for this anymore because I have worked through and spent a small island on not only my training and skill set to help others, but on my own very personal trauma experience and the learnings and the lessons through that, through all of the support systems, the shamans I've worked with, the energy practitioners, the hormone coaches, the naturopaths, the gut health specialists, the counselors, the psychologists. All of those support systems have allowed me to sit here and talk with you today quite openly and vulnerably about some of the things that maybe in the past would have created more shame, more habitual neural pathways of survival and more rage. But I remember once I kicked my mum in the chest and I said to her, I hope she died. And it was a really horrible, pivotal moment. So in all of those other things and me trying to intervene and the misunderstanding of that made me more rageful and more angry. And that was really the time, if I link it all together, when I had to get out. And my dad was so protective of my mum. He was so angry at me. And he basically threw all my clothes at me and said, get the fuck out of the house. And, rightfully so, because even though now I can understand what she was going through, the expression of that I needed to embody and work through so that I could learn how to manage and repattern those pathways of my brain so that even when things weren't a threat, I wasn't at risk of hurting somebody else. And there was no fault. There's no one's fault for this, but it's our responsibility as humans to take ownership and accountability over whatever survival mechanisms we have, to unshape them, to embody them, to love them. Because if I didn't have those, I don't know who I would be today. And you don't know who you would be. But if you are still in your rage state, if you are still projecting out, if you are still telling lies, or if you are still doing deceitful things or not honoring your wholeness, then maybe look a little bit deeper at how you can embody and understand from a neuroscience or a patterned response that it's okay, but you no longer need to stay in survival. There are ways around and processes that can help you embody all of those aspects of self and then lead with more love and passion and joy and softness, whilst also honoring that there will be anger that will come up. So how do we start to dismantle this armor? Well, for me, having those horrible experiences, and to be honest, I took them right into my older life. I knew I had to do something with my rage, and I knew I had to, so it shifts. Usually when we're in these high, which are low actually, elevated states of rage and anger or deep, deep shame, the vibration is low, but the system itself feels quite high, specifically with rage, not necessarily with shame. So I had snippets of moments when I started meditating that I could manage, but the deeper work didn't come until later on in life. And as I move through our episodes, I will share other little snippets about some of the bullying and the abusiveness that not only did I attract into my life, but I projected out. And it did take probably up until I was 40, and I had made some really big wrong moves around the people that I've hurt in my life. And I acknowledge full responsibility for that. But I guess the expression and the lessons that we all have to learn are very individualized. And I took that on board and I completely transformed my life through that process. And every step of the way was a work in progress. So awareness is the start. It's not enough. That is not embodiment. Awareness is just starting to take ownership and responsibility around our automatic responses and understanding their origins. And then we can start to question whether they're really truly serving us. And the process isn't about fighting our brain's protective systems, but rather updating them. It's about retraining our brain to understand that we are no longer those past harmful situations, that as adults, we can choose a different response. And the beauty about neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It's our greatest ally. And through practices like mindfulness, meditation, intentional emotional engagement, we can bring about a softening. We can reshape these old patterns, and we can form new pathways that align with our current values and desires. Those, for me, of love, adventure, and connection. And in the earlier days when I was 15 and I met my husband, I was still very confused because every time I tried to do better, get better, work smarter, train more, do more, I was met with the opposition. There was another conflict in my way, and it was a real challenge to keep on the path of working and integrating and embodying. But again, all blessings, because every time I was met with resistance as I changed, it gave me more of a desire and more of a yearning to prove myself to the world. The issue there was I was doing it for other people, not for myself. And that is probably the greatest transformative change I've had over the last 10 years, is that yes, they were blessings that I was making these changes and trying to interrupt patterns to sever contracts and to heal intergenerational trauma. But it took me really into my 40s to actually acknowledge that I was still doing it out of desperation for getting support and reassurance from other people. It wasn't until 10 years ago that I actually said, that's enough. I have to do this for me now, not for other people. So adventure, love and connection, I began to recreate these coping mechanisms. And rather than stay in survival, as I created habits and set new intentions and developed more awareness, I was able to embody a different form of love, and I was able to soften into those expressions with others too. That's a bit of a mouthful today, right? But my rage experience, I'm not going to say I have regrets. And for those listeners or watchers who are in my family who have had their own very real experience of me in my rage, they might not understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it acceptable for me to continue to project my shadow, my darker parts to self on others? No. However, through change and transformation, they also have a very real expression or what's the right word? An opportunity. They have an opportunity through the receiving of my rage to challenge and change the way they want to perceive their world, the way they want to work into their world. For me, the only person that I can represent and be responsible for and acknowledge and understand and deeply love from all aspects of self is me. Thank you for joining us on The Embodied Spirit Uncensored. Today's journey may have ended, but your personal transformation has only just begun. So keep channeling the insights and energies from our episode. And as you move forward, remember, this podcast is for those who are not just living, but are seeking to live profoundly. Continue to explore, expand and evolve with us. Make sure to follow this series, connect with us on Instagram at Nicole D'Alessandro Perth, or visit www.nicoledalessandro.com.au for more transformative content. You can also find me on Facebook at Nicole D'Alessandro. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and more importantly, stay batshit crazy as you embody and explore beyond your current realm of existence. I'll see you later for now, and remember, this journey to embodying your spirit is the most significant journey you'll ever undertake.